Right, welcome back, guys. Welcome to the new channel. You may have seen me before in here, but we're starting from zero again. We're going to get this going straight away. This is probably going to be a hard one to do first off straight away. But this is the Piers Morgan show, and it's tragic and obscene as Henry Nowak's death is the new George Floyd. So, we're going to get into this right now. Like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to bring you everything. And do you know what? I'm just going to let you know how I feel. I'm not going to be scared anymore and thinking I'm going to get a knock on the door by police, which is the reason why I don't have my other YouTube channel. So, let's get into this right now.
Mate, this dad.
Don't think you have, mate.
Oh, I can't breathe.
The parallels between the Henry Nowak killing and George Floyd are undeniable. But the difference is this. Henry Nowak actually was who the left pretended George Floyd out to be.
If there had been a situation where a black kid was walking down the street and a white guy stabbed him to death, and then the cops handcuffed the black dude while he was bleeding out and sided with the white dude who had just stabbed him to death, I don't think Mark would be up here saying, let's not make this a race issue.
This is an opportunity for us to think about policing differently. Either reform or, in my tradition, abolition.
Mark, when you say abolition, are you actually advocating for abolishing the police altogether?
I am, yes.
Right now, you have Nigel Farage, and he said the following. I suggest the rest of us respond to this with pure, cold rage.
I can't breathe. The chilling words of 18-year-old student Henry Nowak as he lay dying in handcuffs, falsely accused of a racist attack by the man who just stabbed him, as it turned out, to death. The video is harrowing, but it should be seen far and wide by as many people as possible.
My head. Are you injured?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, a little bruise.
All right, just step back a little bit for me. Grab his other arm. What's happened to you, all right?
Mate, this dad.
You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Absolutely disgusting.
Well, the police officers didn't believe he'd been stabbed. One of them actually told him
Those officers need to get locked up. Disgusting.
directly. They read him his rights and cuffed his hands even as he lay dying. The officers did believe Vikram Digwar, Henry's Sikh killer, who stayed at the scene of the murder he'd just committed to falsely accuse his dying victim of a racist assault. The parallels with George Floyd are clear, but it's not about martyrdom. It's about how society and culture responds to tragedy and outrage. Black Lives Matter had global support to begin with, but unity in a crisis doesn't last for long.
Yeah.
Facts change. People fight about the solutions. Fanatics in either camp use the public's passion to push fanatical ideas. And that's how BLM mutated into an obsession with racism and identity, hand in hand with believing all victims and assuming guilt. That's how you end up with official guidance from police chiefs, which says that officers should treat white people and minorities differently. Our commitment to racial equity means producing equality of policing outcomes for people from different ethnic groups, it says. The equality of policing outcomes should be directly connected to whether you committed a crime and nothing else. It's hard to imagine that any of this language would exist without the post-BLM climate of hysteria, which led to branding everything from cricket to the actual countryside as institutionally racist. But since this whole thing is about overcorrection, about...
Yeah, do you remember that? Recently, they were saying that the countryside is racist because there's not many brown or black people there. There's also less crime rate there, so go figure. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's just... I mean, what can you say really about what happened to Henry, apart from if it was on the other side, if it was on Blackfoot, it would be completely different, and people would be out writing now, saying that the whole society is racist and the police force is racist, but nothing. Cricket is absolutely disgusting.
And reactions to genuine outrage, we have to look at what's happened since. Henry's father said this.
We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension. We want his story to make our streets safer for everyone.
Well, Nigel Farage, in a so-called emergency address, then said this.
Henry's family have responded to this in just the most extraordinarily dignified way. But I suggest the rest of us respond to this with pure, cold rage.
All right on cue, there were violent protests and clashes with police in Southampton where the murder happened last night.
So that's Nigel Farage appealing to the right wing. He knows that Restore are coming up behind him faster every week. And so he's not making the same mistake as what happened with the three little girls and Axel Rudakabana. Sorry guys, I'm going to sneeze here. He's not acting the same way because he knows that he needs to appeal to these sort of people now. The people that make up this country, that work in the factories, that work on site, people that I work with every day, English.
Bobby Robertson whipped them up with a speech talking about Pakistani Muslims who had nothing to do with his killing. Elon Musk has led the charge online, as many US commentators have seized on this horror as proof that white people have been victims all along. The truth is, the same people were the loudest critics of identity politics. The idea that characteristics like skin colour should define everything and that one group inevitably abuses the other. The other can't see the trap they're falling into, or more likely, they can, and they're doing this for vengeance. We should all be incensed by Henry Nowak's murder and demand it never happens again. But nothing ever gets better if you simply repeat the same mistakes. Well, joining me in the studio for the first time, actually, is Michael Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show. Michael, you're in England, you're in London, you're in my studio. It's a trifecta of joy.
It's good to be with you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Really great to see you. You're here to talk at the Oxford Union, amongst other things, but it's great to have you here, particularly for what is going to be, I think, a very pertinent debate, and I'll be very interested in your views on this. We're also joined by Mark Lamont Hill, the host of Bet News, by Wajahat Ali, the author of the Left Hook newsletter, and Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem. So a really top-class panel for a really important debate here. And let me start with you, Michael, if I may, about this, because we all remember the George Floyd horror, and it was, from my perspective, I wrote this at the time, I believe it now, he should never have died. It was a horrific thing to watch on video. The reaction was enormous globally. Some felt it was an overreaction. Others looked for fault in George Floyd, but ultimately I felt it was a police officer massively behaving in a way which should never have been tolerated. And indeed, he's now incarcerated. Here we have again, in the UK, we have at least one police officer, but a group of them are there, but one who just not only refused to believe that Henry Nowak had been stabbed, but the police collectively bought into the killer's story that he had been the subject of racial abuse and that was what was really going on here, which turned out all to be complete nonsense. I don't want to read too much into this, as some people want to. People calling for civil war and the rest of it. I don't want to read too little into it, Michael. This, to me, was a horrific thing, which is a stain on the British police, and I do think was a direct consequence of a lot of the fallout from the BLM period, where I think a lot of institutions swung the pendulum too far the other way and began to make terrible miscalculations, as we saw in this moment, where their first thought was to believe a claim of racism which turned out to be untrue. What is your perspective on this?
Well, the parallels between the Henry Nowak killing and George Floyd are undeniable. They use the very same words, the very same dying words, "I can't breathe." The difference is this: Henry Nowak actually was who the left pretended and tried to make George Floyd out to be. That was the big difference.
Yeah.
We can look at the killing of George Floyd and say it was very sad and it shouldn't have happened and this could have changed or that could have changed. But the fact is, the police were there because George Floyd had committed a crime. George Floyd ingested 4 times the lethal limit of fentanyl. George Floyd then resisted arrest for minutes and minutes on end. And so the use of force by Derek Chauvin was a use of force of last resort. In this...
Yeah, look at Mark Lamont Hill pulling his face like that. The facts are the facts, and we know that was the case. Should he have died? No, he shouldn't have died, obviously. But it's a true statement of what he said, really. I believe that, what they profess George Floyd to be, and they've got all the paintings, and he's on a lot of buildings in America and even in the UK. It's like they profess him out to be this saint that was a good man and that weren't a woman beater and all this kind of stuff. But he was a criminal, he was an arsehole. He shouldn't have died, and he didn't deserve to die. But Henry Nowak was a genuine, good young lad. My lad's only a couple of years younger than him. And where is the outrage coming from the black community? There ain't any. it just comes from British patriots, which many white people stood for the black community when George Floyd died anyway, but I don't see on all these riots where the black community is. I just see them silent, and so this is my commentary on how I see things as a black man in this case.